Kodama Kawashiri is about a literal me character, or more specifically, a literally the mangaka character. The series is an autobiographical portrayal of the webcomic's creator's daily life. Kawashiri is a self-described dangerous life hacker, constantly trying to optimize her life so that she can have more time to laze around and do nothing. Though most of her attempts at optimizing end up making her life worse. Some examples would be taking naps to restore her energy, only to wake up even more exhausted, convincing herself that skipping breakfast is unhealthy, but eating ramen in the morning is a healthy alternative. Throughout the series, she constantly eats greasy food, drinks alcohol, sleeps during the day, and works through the night. However, for many people in online spaces, this lifestyle is rather relatable. It reflects a self-destructive but familiar existence that makes the audience think, she's literally me! When people talk about literal me characters, they usually mean one of two extremes. It's either an idealized figure like the protagonist of Drive betrayed by Ryan Gosling, or a complete social disaster like Tomoko from Waldemote. The driver is quiet, emotionally detached, and socially awkward in ways that often can be interpreted in relatable autistic-coded ways. With that though, he is still heavily idealized through his coolness, attractiveness, and competence. Tomoko represents the opposite side of that spectrum. She possesses the same social dysfunction, but without the fantasy of attractiveness or competence to soften it. Her insecurity and self-destructive behavior pushes people away rather than drawing them in. The culture of the literal me character arguably begins with George Costanza from Seinfeld. George exists somewhere between those two extremes. Like Tomoko, he constantly sabotages himself through insecurity, dishonesty, and poor decisions. Yet, like the driver, he still manages to stumble into relationships, career opportunities, and social success. George is neither especially cool nor relatively attractive, yet the world still continues to reward him in bizarre ways. The balance of failure, insecurity, and occasional success makes him perhaps the most realistic version of the literal me character. Kawashiri belongs with the same lineage. The design of the driver, Tomoko, and George is important to how the world perceives them and how they perceive themselves. Likewise, the design of Kawashiri uses heavy kappa imagery to reinforce the idea of her literal meanness. A kappa is a Japanese yokai associated with gluttony, laziness, and strange or grotesque behavior. Those qualities fit Kawashiri remarkably well. Throughout the series, Kawashiri is constantly searching for ways to minimize effort so she can spend more time lounging around, eating greasy food, and drinking alcohol. She creates life hacks not to improve herself, but to maximize her laziness. In one episode, she splits herself into 3 separate bodies so she can divide up her responsibilities more efficiently. Instead, all 3 versions of herself choose to slack off. The kappa imagery also emphasizes Kawashiri's separation from normal society. Like a yokai living outside the human world, she exists on the edge of ordinary social life. She sleeps during the day, works through the night, and primarily interacts with the world through the internet. In episode 15, she comments on the strange people who populate her neighborhood, such as the man who spends all day hanging around the convenience store. However, the joke is that Kawashiri herself belongs among those weird people. To outsiders, she is just as strange, the woman who always buys the same salmon bento, or the woman who spills her spaghetti while trying to get pizza. Her perspective reveals how easily people normalize their own eccentricities while judging the behavior of others. Kawashiri's characterization also connects closely to the modern idea of goblin mode, a term commonly defined as the rejection of social expectations in favor of the self-indulgence and hedonism without concern for appearance or self-image. Unlike a character like Umaru-chan, who switches between socially acceptable public self and a lazy private self, Kawashiri exists entirely within that goblin mode. It is no longer a hidden side of her personality, but her default state of being. She has completely lost the divide between her social self and her private self, leaving her permanently detached from ordinary social expectations. The idea not only applies to Kawashiri, but to many literal me characters in general. Characters like the driver are appealing, not because audiences share their competence or coolness, but because audiences relate to their alienation and emotional distance from others. The difference is the driver exists within a fantasy where alienation becomes attractive. Tomoko exists within a world where alienation becomes humiliating. George Costanza occupies the middle ground, where alienation becomes survivability. Kawashiri belongs there as well, but in a modern way. She exists in a world where alienation has become normalized. Despite living outside many societal norms, she is still able to function within society without completely collapsing under the weight of her habits. Mostly. That balance between dysfunction and survival is what makes her feel so recognizable to modern audiences. Work from home jobs and online creator careers, where someone can live most of their life through the internet with minimal IRL interactions, have become increasingly normalized. A person living like Kawashiri no longer feels like an absurd comedic exaggeration, but something recognizable in contemporary life. In that sense, Kawashiri represents a modern evolution of the literal main character. What once appeared as comedic dysfunction or social failure has become increasingly normalized within contemporary digital life. Her alienation is no longer exceptional but ordinary, which is why many people can look at her and think, she's literally me!